Vehicles are stuck in one place, and civilians are stranded everywhere. The radio keeps broadcasting news about a powerful storm approaching the city. The government advises people to stay where they are for their own safety. One of the vehicles belongs to a woman named Sandra. She is actually the manager of Valencia Bank. Sandra calls a man named Antonio and asks if her name is on the list of people being evacuated. Antonio tells her that he has not received any information yet. Sandra then says that even if her name appears on the list, Antonio must keep it a secret. After that, Sandra steps out of her car and heads toward the bank. She asks the staff whether they have activated the bank alarms. A man named Mahi tells her that because of the bad weather and traffic jams, most of the staff have not arrived yet. He adds that the weather will hopefully improve by noon, and they will complete the necessary work then. At that moment, an employee notices that Sandra looks a little worried. Mahi reveals that Sandra's name is on the list of employees who may be fired from the bank. When Sandra returns to her office, she immediately calls Antonio again to confirm the news. She learns that her name has indeed been added to the list, which means she is almost certain to lose her job. Hearing this, Sandra feels completely devastated. At that very moment, a group of armed gangsters suddenly attacks the bank. Some of them are wearing bomb vests and quickly threaten all the officers with their guns. Meanwhile, Sandra is in her office talking to her relative, Walken. She asks Walken for help so she can avoid losing her job, but Walken bluntly tells her that he cannot do anything to help. Suddenly, a gangster named Gallego, along with his partner Jack, bursts into the office. They tie Sandra's hands and feet and take her hostage. After that, they use special tools to break into the bank vault and begin stealing the money. They also start digging a tunnel underground. Their plan is to move all the stolen goods through this tunnel and take them out of the bank. Meanwhile, the gang leader Uruguayo carefully controls everyone inside the bank so that no one outside notices the robbery. However, he suddenly realizes that someone has pressed the office alarm button. Uruguayo becomes furious and brutally beats the man responsible. He then threatens to blow up the entire bank. At that moment, a woman begs him not to detonate the bomb. She says that her son is alone at home and waiting for her. She pleads with him to show mercy. Uruguayo then tells the woman to call her son. He gives her 5 minutes to talk to him. After that, he allows all the hostages 1.5 minutes to speak with their families. In reality, Uruguayo is only trying to scare them and has no intention of killing anyone. Meanwhile, the police receive the alarm signal and quickly realize that thieves have broken into the bank. Detective Domingo calls the bank's number. One of the gangsters answers the call and threatens to kill all the hostages if the police try to interfere before they complete their mission. The gangsters demand a car and a plane in exchange for the prisoners' lives. However, Detective Domingo says that he cannot make such a decision alone and needs permission from a senior officer. Later, Gallego informs his boss that the tunnel they built for their escape is flooded because of the heavy rain. They decide to wait for half an hour so the water level can go down. During this time, Sandra tells Gallego that she is about to be fired from her job. She then advises him to rob a specific safe in the bank. According to Sandra, that safe contains a secret that could completely change their lives if it is revealed. However, Sandra says she will only tell him about the special safe if he agrees to give her a share of the stolen money. Meanwhile, a politician named Jones is lying in a hospital in a coma. His wife Mariana is sitting beside him when she suddenly sees news of a bank robbery on television. She becomes terrified and immediately calls Detective Julio to ask if the news is true. Julio replies that he has not heard anything about it yet. Mariana then explains that her husband Jones owns a special safe in that bank. If anyone opens that safe, Jones could fall into serious trouble. Julio tries to calm her down and promises that he will personally investigate the situation. After that, Julio calls Officer Ferran and tells him everything Mariana had explained. Julio says he does not know what is inside that safe, but whatever it is must be extremely confidential. Meanwhile, Sandra shows Gallego a video on a screen. In the video, a man named John can be seen approaching a safety deposit box while holding a hard drive. He is about to store that hard drive inside the safe. Sandra explains that a few years ago, a detective exposed John's fraud, which caused him serious problems. At that time, John's name was being mocked across the entire country. Later, John prepared a letter containing proof of his crimes, and also the names of government officials who had helped him with the scam. All of that information was stored on the hard drive and placed inside the bank's vault. In exchange for revealing the vault number, Gallego gives Sandra some valuable diamonds that he stole from the bank. After receiving the diamonds, Sandra finally reveals the vault number, which is 314. Meanwhile, Uruguayo calls Detective Domingo again and asks him to send food to the bank. Uruguayo also warns him not to poison the food, because he will make the hostages eat it first before he eats it himself. He asks if that is understood. After some time, Gallego notices that the water level inside the tunnel is starting to rise again. He quickly tells his partners that they must complete their mission and escape as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the police complete completely surround the bank building. The gangsters force several bank employees to wear bomb vests. They warn that the bombs will be detonated if anyone makes even the slightest movement. Gallego then goes to the area where the safety deposit boxes are kept. He tells his partner that John's box is number 314. After hearing this, his partner becomes suspicious. He believes that Gallego might be deceiving them and that he came here only to steal this one specific box. He is about to tell the others that Gallego came for something else. However, Gallego quickly explains that Sandra told him about the box. Even then, the rest of the gang insists that they should immediately enter the tunnel before it floods. All the gang members quickly pick up their bags filled with stolen money and move toward the tunnel. They climb down one by one. The last gang member uses a strong rope to pull a table over the tunnel opening, sealing it from above. One of the gangsters then moves toward the end of the tunnel to check if they can swim out through the exit. But within moments, he begins to lose his breath and returns. He tells the others that the water current is too strong for anyone to pass through. Finally, they decide that the only option is to return to the bank. They struggle to push the table away from the opening so they can climb back inside. Meanwhile, the police prepare to enter the bank. Domingo calls Uruguayo and informs him that the food they requested has arrived outside. He tells him that someone needs to open the door to receive it. One of the gangsters goes to open the door. Outside, several police officers are standing near the wall, ready to storm the building. But just as the door opens, the police suddenly receive an order to abort the operation. At the last moment, they are forced to retreat. In reality, government officials who had secretly worked with John are gathered together. They are desperately discussing how to escape this dangerous situation. It is then revealed that one of those officers secretly gave Uruguayo the mission of stealing John's hard drive from the vault in order to protect himself. When Farad and his team learn about this, they become extremely angry. They realize that the officer made a serious mistake by taking such a huge decision without consulting anyone. To fix the situation, they decide to ask for help from a detective named Paolo. They trust him completely. They assign Detective Paolo the mission of retrieving the hard drive from the gangsters and delivering it to Farhan. Meanwhile, the gangsters believe that as long as they possess Jones's box, they are safe. They think they can use it to blackmail the officials if necessary. When Uruguayo learns that Sandra gave Gallego the number of the box, he immediately suspects something. He realizes that Gallego must have given Sandra something valuable in return. Furious, Uruguayo storms toward the bathroom where Sandra is hiding. He begins banging loudly on the door. When he finally confronts her, Uruguayo loses his temper and attacks Sandra. He demands to know what she received in exchange for revealing the box number. Soon after, Gallego arrives and begins fighting with Uruguayo. He is actually angry because Uruguayo kept the existence of the valuable box a secret from the rest of the gang. When Uruguayo enters the bathroom, he finds the bag that once contained the diamonds. However, the bag is now completely empty. This discovery makes him even more furious. He realizes that Gallego paid Sandra with diamonds instead of money. Uruguayo then tells the rest of the gang that Sandra swallowed the diamonds so no one could take them from her. Meanwhile, another gangster named Loco begins trying to access the files stored on the hard drive, but instead of the files, he finds a chess game on the screen that contains a strange puzzle. As soon as he makes a wrong move, all the data on the hard disk is automatically deleted. He desperately tries to recover the data, but nothing works. Shortly afterward, Detective Paolo begins working on the case. He calls the bank and Uruguayo answers the phone. By this time, the police have already surrounded the bank. Uruguayo becomes furious because his gang's escape now seems impossible. Paolo announces that he will handle the situation from this point forward. He says that he wants to meet Uruguayo in person since he is the leader of the gang. However, Uruguayo refuses at first because he fears the police might shoot him. Paolo then promises that no one will harm him. Only after hearing this assurance does Uruguayo agree to meet him at the bank's entrance. When Uruguayo comes out to meet him, Paolo tells him that he can help the gang escape. But in return, Uruguayo must follow every instruction he gives. After returning inside the bank, Uruguayo tells his gang members that Paolo is willing to help them escape. However, some of the gangsters suspect that this might be a trick by the police. Uruguayo explains Paolo's plan. According to the plan, Paolo will go to the 4th floor of a nearby building. The gang members will move to the 2nd floor of the bank. From there, they will climb through a window and enter a nearby apartment. Inside the apartment, they will find police uniforms. They will wear those uniforms and quietly escape without raising suspicion. At that moment, Loco tells Uruguayo that because of his mistake, all the data on the hard disk has been erased. Hearing this, Uruguayo becomes extremely angry and begins beating Loco violently. Just then, Gallego arrives and tries to calm Uruguayo down. But when he learns what happened to the hard disk, he also becomes furious. He joins Uruguayo and beats Loco severely. They soon realize that their final bargaining tool has been destroyed. Following Paolo's instructions, the gang quietly moves into the building next to the bank. One of Paolo's men is already waiting there for them. The gang members quickly change into the police uniforms. However, suddenly Gallego strikes Paolo's man on the head and knocks him unconscious. The gang then leaves without informing Paolo. They do this so that no one will discover that the hard disk is now empty. After that, they take Sandra and Toy down to the entrance of the building. There they encounter several police guards. Before allowing them to leave, the guards ask them to show their identification cards. When the guards question Sandra's presence, Gallego says that they found her on the 5th floor. But the officers begin to suspect something is wrong and stop them from leaving. At that moment, Uruguayo and his gang suddenly point their guns at the police. The officers immediately draw their weapons as well. A fierce gunfight breaks out between both sides. During the chaos, Sandra is shot in the arm. Gallego and Uruguayo quickly pick her up and carry her to a safe corner of the building. Both of them feel guilty and sorry for her. They decide to leave her there so that she will not remain in danger with them. Uruguayo asks Sandra to delay the police for as long as possible. After saying goodbye to her, both men leave the area. Later, Uruguayo calls Paolo again. Paolo tells him that he will now have to face the consequences of everything he has done. He urges Uruguayo to surrender to the police. However, Uruguayo refuses and says that if he and his companions do not receive a vehicle within 30 minutes, they will begin killing one hostage every 15 minutes. After the call ends, Paolo speaks with Julio and advises him to handle the situation carefully. Paolo explains that this gang is extremely dangerous and has never failed in its plans before. He says their main priority must be saving the hostages and forcing the criminals out of the bank safely. Meanwhile, Uruguayo sits with Gallego in the safety deposit vault room. Both of them apologize to each other for what happened earlier. They begin sharing their sides of the story. Soon, their tension fades, and they even start laughing together. At the same time, Loco develops feelings for one of the hostages. He gives her a large amount of money from the stolen loot and tells her she can use it to pay off her debts. People say that the money came from the safe of a corrupt politician who had been stealing from ordinary citizens. The girl finally accepts the money, hides it inside her clothes, and quietly leaves the room. Meanwhile, Uruguayo and his gang begin to realize that things are not going according to their original plan. Because of this, Uruguayo comes up with a new idea. Uruguayo calls Paolo and says he wants to speak with a government official. When Paolo asks him the reason, Uruguayo refuses to explain. Instead, he threatens that if his demands are not met, he will release all the data stored on John's hard drive to the entire world. Paolo becomes shocked when he hears this. This is because he himself is one of the corrupt officers who had secretly been involved in John's illegal activities. Julio then calls Ferran and tells him that he should personally resolve the situation by secretly negotiating with Uruguayo's gang. Ferran has no choice but to agree. When Ferran finally meets Uruguayo and Gallego, he offers them a deal. He promises that their prison sentences will be reduced if they hand over the hard disk. However, the gang refuses the offer. They say they want to escape the country with the stolen money and have no intention of going to jail. They also lie by saying that they have already watched the videos stored on the hard disk. They claim those videos show Ferran and several other officials involved in illegal activities. Uruguayo then demands that Ferran quickly arrange a vehicle so they can escape from the bank. Meanwhile, Sandra is shown receiving treatment in a hospital. Ferran's secretary comes to visit her and asks questions about the gang. Sandra reveals the names of several gang members. She also explains that the gangsters do not fully trust each other. Because of this, it would not be very difficult to create conflict among them. Meanwhile, Ferran calls Uruguayo and asks to see the videos stored on the hard disk. When Uruguayo refuses, Ferran immediately becomes suspicious. Ferran says that he already knows the truth. He tells Uruguayo that there are no videos on the hard disk. After realizing this, Ferran informs his superior officer about the entire situation. They decide that the best option now is to storm the bank and arrest the gang. Soon the police break open the bank doors and rush inside. They quickly gather all the prisoners and place them onto a bus. However, a shocking truth is soon revealed. The gang members had secretly exchanged clothes with the hostages. By the time the police realize what has happened, it is already too late. The gangsters have escaped through the tunnel along with all the stolen money. The rain has stopped by then, and the water flow inside the tunnel has slowed down, allowing them to pass through easily. In the end, the entire gang successfully escapes the country and begins a new life somewhere else. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you again in the next video.